Welcome to Sikorski's Thinkabouts, and I'm your host, Laura Sikorski. My guests and I share our operations and technology expertise to help you provide outstanding customer service and customer experiences. Today our guest is Joe Ogno, and he is a sales engineer for Inside Source. And believe it or not, we're going to talk something very, very different about workplace strategy and what does it mean today. Now, Joe works with architects, engineers, designers, real estate executives, and then of course works with you, the corporate business owner who has to relocate, find new place to work, and so the facilities managers, the grounds, everything comes into place when you are working and finding new office space. His specialties are corporate interiors, multi-hire education, and of course community contracts. And before the show, Joe said two very important things to me, and one dealt with the philosophy of furniture today. So why don't we start our discussion?
Sure. Thank you for having me. The philosophy that we spoke about prior to the show was speaking that your office space is an environment that we try to transform to get the most out of the workers, to get the most out of the employees. You transform the space so it's not just workstations. It's more important, and it creates a vision and basically a corporate culture.
Mm-hmm. And and it's not, guys, don't think you're going to change the office to make you more productive. That's kind of an end goal, but it's to make you more comfortable in your work environment and to give you more options. What are the trends that you're seeing today in office space design?
The trends today are very different than they were even a few years ago, and certainly different from 10 or 20 years ago. Technology impacts every single thing we do. There's nothing today that technology doesn't touch, whether it's workstations, conference rooms, video conferencing. Technology touches everything we do with furniture. So technology is the largest trend that is really pushing things along. And we spoke a little bit about future-proofing. So technology is probably the biggest of all the drivers, but there's others as well. We have the digital talent that now is a trend. The digital talent in the workspace comes and goes, when you shut the lights off at night. So those people are trying to be attracted and retained more often. So that's a trend as well. If your workspace is being utilized correct and it looks like it's supposed to look, you're going to be able to attract and retain employees.
So that's almost like the new trend out in the technology world is the Internet of Things. Mm-hmm. And what that means is everything we do in some way, shape, or form is touched by the Internet. Personalization, everybody knows everything about everybody else today, which is scary, but it's still a trend, and now it's affecting the workplace. I mean, I understand even a technology trend is when you walk out of an office, the lights shut off, or when you walk into an office, the lights come on. So there are so many different things. One of the things that Joe had said to me, work is what you do, not where you go.
Right.
And I thought that was an interesting philosophy, an interesting trend, particularly today with the millennials, because, we always go to work. Where are you going? Going to work. And they don't even think of it as work.
Right.
They think of it more in the collaboration field. But what do you do with a small business or right through a large business? Does these trends impact?
Yeah, well, the trends, some of the other trends to quickly touch on would be occupancy costs. Those drive a lot. Today, real estate is so expensive,
right,
and everyone's trying to shrink a footprint. So that's a real driver and a real thing to be concerned about. Small to mid-sized companies have to deal with the same trends, but they may not have the technology, the dollars, or the people to deal with those trends. So the smaller company can really use firms like Inside Source or some other firms that will help them transform their space without the help of their internal people. They may not have someone who's going to be the head of health and safety. If you're only a 25-person firm, you don't have that.
Right.
So what we try to do is in a small to mid-sized company is to be those people for them and try to see where they need to go, what they're trying to do with their company, and help them.
Right, because again, design really affects how the company operates, how they collaborate. Do they have a wonderful conference room like this where they can go and discuss and try to make new strategies for where the company wants to go in the future?
Right.
You mentioned the digital worker or the knowledge worker.
Mm-hmm.
What are the numbers of people in those places?
So the average knowledge worker is 40% of the time a knowledge worker is at their desk. So that means 60% of the time they're not at their desk, which years ago, even the knowledge workers, you're at your desk, let's not say 100% of the time, but you're at your desk much greater than 50% of the time. And the second part about that is the individual work that you do. It used to be about 15 years ago was about 40% of what we did was individual work. Today that's about 20.
Wow.
So collaboratively, there need to be spaces and places and culture for us to get together on ideas. We can share it on the internet. We can share it by sharing our screen. We can send emails, but sometimes you do need to collaborate.
Well, and you know what? I think we've gotten a little way overboard with texting and email, and for number one, even picking up the phone and say, let's meet and talk about a specific project.
Mm-hmm.
And I really am happy to see that, because in the call center world, collaboration is key, because there are so many issues with customers that come up, and so you can take a field of agents and put them in a project room and say, okay, come up with a solution, guys.
Right. And in the call center world, so much of what needs to, besides collaboration, is also training.
Right.
Though, as you know, with all your work you've done in call centers, it has to be a corporate culture of training and giving people the tools they need to do the job.
And it's amazing today how many companies don't have training facilities or training programs, even to the point of just having an e-learning that you could, work at your desk if you so desired. But training is a corporate culture that has to come back. And I'm hoping that, we're going to see an improvement in that. We talked earlier about engagement, and it's not only the customer engaging with the business, it's the employee. So how has workspace I was going to say interfered, but I guess it's an okay kind of word.
Interactive.
How is that happening today?
Well, it's funny because for years you always heard about customer engagement and how do you stay engaged with your customers. But large corporations, especially large corporations, realize that disengagement on the employee level is a real problem. 80% of the executives say that it's the thing they worry about. The only thing they worry about more than that is the company direction or management. So engagement is really a concern.
Wow.
So what we've seen is a relative disengagement among workers, partially because of the way they've been treated over the last, let's say, 10 years. It's a lot more of a revolving door policy. Mm-hmm. But disengagement also comes along with the way an office gets laid out, or workplace safety, or the particular opportunities that come.
Right.
So the disengagement is an issue, for sure.
And that's a big concern. Well, we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we are going to talk about something called well-being.
Hi, I'm Tim Stead. I'm from Star Communications. We're a marketing support company. And if you need help with your next marketing project, please call 273-1900, or you can go to our website, starcommunications.us.
Welcome back to Sikorski's Think Abouts, and I'm your host, Laura Sikorski. Today with me is Joe Ogno, and he is the sales engineer for Inside Source. And when we left, we had talked about strategy, and now I really would like our show to kind of take on a new twist, and that's to talk about well-being. This, years ago we always had safety and welfare, and now the words well-being. Could you explain that concept a little bit?
Sure. Well, well-being now in the workspace could mean a host of things, many, many things. And small to mid-sized companies have the same concerns that large companies do. But it ranges everywhere from ergonomics, how someone sits and how they do their job. Are things at their fingertips? Are they not going to get carpal tunnel? It goes to the acoustics. Are things too loud? Or is it too quiet? I don't feel like I should speak. Lighting, both natural light and real light. air quality is a sick building syndrome. I know you've spoken about that in the past. Thermal, is it too hot? Is it too cold? And even as far as the layout of the office goes. So these are all, it's workplace safety in an entirely different mind. It's a mindset of holistically. How does this building act and react, and how do we keep it productivity? Again, we go back to how do we transform this space to have people working at their best.
And to feel comfortable again, going to work, comfortable in their environment, not having to constantly reach for something,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, at your fingertips. Now, when furniture though, how has that changed? You had talked earlier about 3 different ways.
Yeah, so furniture, the 3 biggest spends, the 3 biggest outlay for any corporation is typically their real estate, it's going to be their people, and it's going to be their technology. They spend a lot of money on those 3 things.
Right.
Most of all of their revenue is going to go to those 3. So what touches all 3 of those things? Furniture. And it's not just standard static furniture, it's anything that goes in a building. It could be conference room furniture, it could be hoteling or hot desks, all of these different aspects. It touches their technology, their people, and their real estate. One of the biggest trends that you asked in the beginning about trends is shrinking footprints. How do you take a shrinking footprint and a demand for technology and people and make all of that work? Because that's kind of a soup of all those things.
Yeah,
If you
that's
tell
like stirring up the
you tell
pot
somebody,
there.
I know you used to sit in 300 square feet, but now you're going to sit in 150 square feet,
Right.
and you got to be happy. So how do you do that? You really have to take those 3 things, marry them together, and transform a space. It is doable, but you really need some professionals to help you, and on not just the furniture side, the design side, the facility side. And when people look for their real estate, they need to know that.
Right, and I know sometimes I walk into a call center and they're in huge desks, and yet they need a PC, they need a phone, and today they're even using the smartphone. It's on the PC, so they don't
Right.
really need a phone on the desk. And so everything is in the computer. Gone are the days where you had manuals at your desk and so forth. Everything through training and so forth is in the cloud, even if you
Right.
wanted to look at it that way. What do you think the complaints are today from most workers?
Well, they certainly the one of the biggest complaints is always thermal. It's too hot, it's too cold. But some of the other things you hear is I don't have the tools to do my job.
Right.
Or like you said, my desk. I may have a 6x6 workstation, but I don't have the technology I need at my desk. Very few people need a lot of storage these days. Storage has gone away. Overhead storage. You mentioned before, you open up overhead storage today, there's dust.
There's nothing
Or
in there.
there's
It's
stuffed animals
amazing.
and pictures. There's no one's is storing binders and things like that.
Right,
So
right.
that's definitely some of the changes and challenges. People feel that the need to I want to be more productive, but you need to give me the tools to be productive.
Right.
So that's some of the complaints. A lot of it is the hot cold's never going to go away, I think.
No, that is always there, and I remember when I was an agent in a call center, and they used to have it locked, so they were like, nobody could touch the thermostat to make it
right.
more comfortable, what they thought was
Right.
more comfortable.
Well, when people move in a new space, they can address that. If you're moving into 10,000 square feet brand new, you maybe could address it then before you start building walls and putting up workstations.
Right.
Address it when you have a chance to address it. Because almost 2/3 of changes come up, whether they fail outright or have real challenges. So you try to change corporate culture, 2/3 of the time is significant challenges or they fail. So you really have an opportunity when you're moving in new.
Well, and I notice, and I'm not disparaging remarks against architects and engineers, but I find that they design the HVA ventilation systems prior to the furniture going in. And so what happens is they would be putting air ducts directly over a desk, and of course then it blows out and it's cold, or it's noisy when it turns on, and some people think it's like white noise, but it really isn't. It's just
Right.
the air conditioning vent. How do you recommend, and I like the word you used, future-proofing for furniture of the future and design?
Well, I think when you're doing a project, companies and corporations need to bring in everyone, especially IT and your management, and say, okay, what are the trends you see? What do you think you're going to need next year? How much data and power do you need at a station? This is called data and power for now, because you can't put in the same amount of data into a station that you put in 10 years ago.
Right, that's
But
true.
you also may need less data and power if you're going wireless. So these are all things you really have to have a buy-in from IT and from other management. That's the best way to address that,
Right.
is right up front before you go into it. And you say, how do we future-proof? You can't always future-proof everything, but you certainly can do the technology and the layout better and better and better.
And that's critical, particularly in call centers. When you move into a new space, that call center should be, the footprint for the work floor for the agents should be 50% bigger, so that you can add furniture to it. And you need to make sure that you have enough conference rooms in the very beginning, because what happens in the call center industry is everybody goes, oh, me too, I want the call center to handle not only my voice, but to handle the emails, to handle the chats that come in from my customers. And suddenly your footprint becomes larger. So again, that beginning design phase
Sure.
is to get all the people together and figure out what they need to do and what they want to do. What do corporations do in terms of design philosophy? Is that a guidance from you guys, or what is their philosophy?
Well, what we like to do is we try to guide people to better decisions.
Mm-hmm.
We try to have some meetings prior to even talking about furniture. And you say, what do people do? What do they need at their desks? What does your call center need?
Right.
How do they handle it? How is your accounting department? What do they need? If you have these conversations and you have them ahead of time, and you take into account their culture. Law firms have a totally different culture than a tech firm.
Right.
That has a totally different culture from a pharmaceutical company.
So what you're saying is you really need to space plan first, and you bucket and you try to look at adjacencies, you look at traffic patterns, because that all influences design. Now, as always, we try to end our show with think-abouts and takeaways for our audience. What do you think the first two? I mean, what can you do to rehab your current environment, if anything, and what would you do if you're going into new space for think-abouts?
We'll take the last one first. In new space, it's very important early on in the process, even when you're just looking at real estate, to bring in some of the other professionals, your architect, a designer, certainly a furniture vendor can help. Anybody who's going to transform that space should have a say, or at least an input in what's going on. Mm-hmm. And if you're trying to do renovations to a current space, sometimes it makes sense to do it in stages, so that you're not trying to interrupt, because if you try to do it all at once, sometimes you short yourself because you can't be out of business for X amount of time. Sure. So it could be a problem. So right. try to do it in stages, and certainly know where to spend your money. If you need a great looking conference room and reception, do your conference room and reception first, so you have all the money.
Right.
So don't run out of money when you get to the private office. Sometimes the private offices will be fine just the way they are for another 6 months.
Right.
But know where to spend your money.
Yes.
And always buy good chairs, because your happy cows make more milk. So, not that I called you a cow, but understand, the audience, that when people are sitting and happy, they're productive.
Right. Their backs aren't hurting. They have a way to elevate their knees, so your body is in a more comfortable position.
Ergonomics.
Well, ergonomics. Thank you. Well, Joe, this has been a great show, and I hope our audience has learned a little bit about furniture and design. And if you'd like to reach Joe, again, he is the sales engineer at Inside Source. It's JOGNO at InsideSource.com, and his direct line is 917-373-1456. And of course, to reach me, it's 631-624-6650. And of course, on Twitter, it's Laura Sikorski. And please, we always welcome any kind of input that you have on a show topic, or if you'd like to be a guest. And my thanks to Corinne Murphy-Caro, who is founder and CEO of the Daily Blue Chip Marketing and Blueprint magazine. She can be reached at 631-761-9223. And we want to thank Sam, our videographer, for the great job that she always does. And with that, thank you, and have a great rest of the day.